Good morning, Super Bowl Sunday here in Minnesota. Way below zero, but I want to at least start this video outside. Before the big game, I want to get started on this little project. You know, sometimes you shop for something and it ends up being way more expensive than you think it's going to be. That was the case with dumbbells. You know, with the pandemic, a lot more people are working out at home. Trying to set up some sort of exercise room at home, and so I thought, you know, when something is that expensive, my first thought is, wait a minute, I wonder if I could make this myself. So the heaviest material I could think of is concrete, and I came up with some pretty good ideas, and I thought, wait a minute, I can't be the first one who's thought of this. So sure enough, there's a bunch of videos out there showing how to do this. Really good videos. I took some of my favorite ideas from those videos, added a couple of my own ideas, and came up with this this plan. So we'll see how it goes. I haven't done it yet. First, I want to talk about the handle. Some guys use metal, some use plastic. I'm going to go with PVC, mainly because plastic to me is just a lot easier to work with as far as cutting to length and drilling. If you look on these other videos, there's some very sophisticated calculators out there that will tell you how much weight you get per unit of volume of concrete. So if you're trying to manufacture a dumbbell of a very specific weight, you might want to get really specific on exactly how much concrete you mix. I'm just going to fill this bucket almost to the top with concrete and see what I end up with. No matter what it is, I'm sure I'll be able to use it. So I'm cold enough now. Let's head into my little workshop downstairs. My idea to keep the pipe centered in the concrete was to take a scrap piece of, I just used plywood, and I traced from the top opening of the bucket, I traced a circle in that wood and found the center and drilled a hole perfectly in the center of that circle so that the pipe would fit. Then I sawed out an escape route for that pipe, and you'll see why that comes in handy. And then around the edge of the circle, you can barely see the circle I traced here, I glued 3 more scraps of wood, as close as possible to an equilateral triangle here. And then those will perfectly fit around the rim when I place it on the concrete. And then that will perfectly center the pipe in the concrete. Okay, so I'm starting with just an inch of water here. I can always add more. It's really hard to take water out. I have a bucket of concrete here. I'm just going to add a little at a time. It's super dusty at first. And just a little bit of water. Okay, perfect. Next step, I have my PVC all drilled out, and I want to end up with about a 7-inch grip here. So if I do the math here, that leaves me with about 6.5 inches dipped into the concrete on either side, which is halfway between these two lines. So I'm just going to plunge it in. Okay, and then key step, I'm going to take a little bit extra out of this and fill the tube. And I don't want this concrete to go past this hole. Now I'm going to take that custom cover, settle it right down over the bucket until it kind of clicks in place there. I'm going to place this square on two sides, and I might just leave my square there to just kind of prop it if necessary. And now we wait. I'm going to remove this lid and see how we look. Alright, so this is pretty solid in here. So the next task is to see if I can somehow release this concrete from the bucket. Well, I ended up having to score this bucket on 3 sides so that I can peel each third of the bucket away. And it finally released. Okay, I set that first piece aside to dry out a little more. I repaired my bucket. I just doubled over the end of each piece so it's easy to rip off afterwards, but that bucket's ready to go. And I got a 2-gallon bucket. What I plan to do now is I'm going to pour 2 buckets of concrete mix into a larger pail, a 5-gallon pail, and mix it with a power tool. It'll be way easier. I can fill 2 buckets at the same time from that. 1 bucket will be the second end to the first dumbbell, and the other bucket will be the first end to the second dumbbell. And since I'm now working with 2 buckets, I will need 2 lids. So I'll use this one again for my first bucket. And for the second bucket, I actually have the original lid. So I'm going to cut out the hole in the center and make my little escape route here, just using a utility knife. Okay, so before I bring a big bucket of wet concrete down here, I want to have a little rehearsal of just what's going to happen. The length of the grip will be the distance between the top of the concrete and the rim of the bucket, which I'm going to fill it pretty high to match the other one, so it'll be about 1/4 inch below, plus the thickness of your lid, which I'm going to snap on here, which is, for me, this plywood is about 3/4 of an inch thick, plus any spacing that you stack on top of this. So I have 4 2x for each side for about 6 inches. Just had some scraps in the garage. And then I'll take the piece I've already done and plunge it right through that hole. Into the concrete, and I'll probably wash it around a little bit just to make sure those holes get filled. And this whole setup keeps it not only the correct depth, but also perfectly perpendicular to the surface of the concrete down there. Remember, start with very little water, add more if you need to. Alright, so now just as I rehearsed, snap that lid on. Get my spacers in place. And plunge her in. Okay, so I have dumbbell number 1 setting, and here's the first end of dumbbell number 2. Just slightly overfilled it so that I have some that I can scoop into the handle. So this time we'll use that lid that I prepared. Snap that on. So I filled it all the way up to that hole. You can barely see it. And then got everything squared up. So, alright, both buckets are ready to sit for a day or two. I'm going to remove my spacers. And this is where the little escape hatch comes out. Remove that, and I should be able to lift the lid and slide it out this way. Now remove my duct tape. And peel this away. And there's my dumbbell. So again, with this one, I have this pretty sharp edge around here. And like I said, a sharp edge is a fragile edge, especially with concrete. So I'm just going to shave this down a little bit. Pretty easy since it's only been 4 days. Okay, getting down to the final steps here. I found a coating that I'm going to brush on to this dumbbell just to protect it a little bit and give it some color. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But in preparation, I'm repairing some of the bigger divots that came out of the concrete when I released it from the buckets. I actually filled them with a vinyl spackle, which is a little tougher than a typical spackle that you would use in sheetrock defects. I just troweled that in, let it dry for a couple days, and it sands pretty easy. A little tough to sand, but you can sand through it. Can concrete be sanded? Absolutely. I found that these sharp and rough edges and any other defects can be sanded off pretty easily. Just make sure you use a sandpaper that is extra tough, like the type you would use on a belt sander or a floor sander. Works pretty well. Okay, as you know, it can take concrete weeks to really fully cure. But it's been multiple days for all these now. I think 30 days for this one. I've been traveling a lot. So I'm convinced that all the water is out of every dumbbell. And I just spent some time cleaning them up, sanding, getting them as dust-free as possible. And I'm ready for this coating. A lot of different products out there for concrete. You can get acrylics and epoxies. I went with this Bear product. Epoxy for years was, and still is in some cases, a two-part product that you mix together before applying. But there are one-part epoxies now, and this one is concrete and garage, one-part epoxy coating, self-priming. I'm counting on this product to just do it all for me. It comes in gray and white. You can use it that way or have it tinted. This one I had tinted to like a brick red just for something different. And I like the way it's going on so far. It's thick enough. I think 2 or 3 coats will be just about right. Let me know how it goes with the product that you choose. But this is going on pretty easily. Okay, here's the final product. A pair of 38 pounders and a pair of 27 pounders. I know they look a lot bigger than that, but keep in mind concrete is not as dense as iron, so it takes a pretty big amount of concrete to equal iron. I would love to have a pair of 50 pounders, but that would be a big bucket of concrete and an awkwardly large dumbbell, so I think I'll just wait for the gyms to open. Thanks for sitting with me through this long process. Let me know what you think, and happy lifting.